Thank you. I pressed record at the same time that I started talking and then threw myself off. But thank you so much, Sarah, for inviting Elder Ruth and gets to speak with us. I feel so present. Thanks to that opening, I feel um, like warmed up from the inside from those words, and just so grateful for the energy and the power that elders carry and bring to us through their work. Feels really important for how we arrive together. So I'm really grateful to that, and really grateful to it offering an opportunity to start us off with Tiara session in such a good way, because we're so excited for all the wisdom that Tiara is going to share with us, and to try this experiment of having the keynote at the end of the day, first day of Procrastination Awareness Week. So I do hope folks will jump in, even if they're arriving late, and we'll get going. I'm gonna just introduce Tara a bit, and then I will hand it over to her. So Tara, I know as an amazing, generous community builder, just powerhouse person in the world, mad auntie vibes. But now I'm going to read her actual bio. So, Tiara is a community care activist, author, researcher, and mindfulness practitioner. With over 20 years of personal practice in mindfulness and meditation, she's worked in various settings, including higher education, athletics, and the nonprofit sector. Tiara is creator and steward of the Equitable Mindfulness Framework, which is a mouthful, which is foundational to the work she does in JEDIA or Jediah spaces. She utilizes this framework for contentious conversations across social differences and teaches people interested in mindfulness how the roots of mindfulness are cross-cultural and found in many of their own wisdom practices, such as the PGM, People of the Global Majority communities. She currently utilizes the Equitable Mindfulness Framework to support curriculum, curate conferences, and create presentations and workshops on mindfulness and equity, like the one we're about to participate in. With Equitable Mindfulness, Tiara has been featured on NPR, National Public Radio, and has a TEDx talk exploring the foundations of this concept, so we can all dig deeper into it after today. Tiara's research focus also includes the strategy of prosociality, i.e. giving back to others, to help buffer well-being during life transitions and boost well-being. She's currently completing her dissertation, which was informed by her recently published study showing that people who engage in prosocial behaviors also experience well-being boosts on 7 dimensions of well-being. She's currently a PhD student at Simon Fraser University, which is where I am right now, in social psychology, and a 2022 Vanier Canada Graduate Scholar was awarded to her for her work in this area. Tiara was born and raised in Memphis. She's a Black American woman with Indigenous heritage in the Mississippi Choctaw and North Carolina Cherokee descendant who learned mindfulness from a South Asian perspective. These intersections are extremely important to her as she continues to conceptualize the intersections of cultural mindfulness within systemically marginalized and overburdened populations. And knowing how just absolutely, you can hear from that bio how absolutely involved and incredible Tiara is in the work that she does. And so I'm so, so grateful that she said yes to doing this presentation for us. And I'm super, super excited to learn from what she has prepared to offer for all of us together today. So Tiara, thank you so much.
Wow. I feel so honored, Julia. Thank you. I didn't know you were going to read the full bio, so now I'm like blushing a little bit, but I am deeply, deeply thank you, and feel just so honored to be here. Thank you to Elder Ruth for the prayer as well. It's so wonderful to have been blessed in this way. Tobacco is also important to the Choctaw people. We call it hakchima, and we use it for prayer and as for contract as well. So it feels really, really deeply just it's humbling to be able to be introduced in this space in this way. And thank you all for the opportunity. So to introduce myself in my native language, which I think is important as well, Halitopa Chia Hoke. Sahachifoyat Tierra Cash, Lusamaliki Michichita Micha Shalagi, Descendant Siahoke, Memphis, Tennessee, Amitali, Arizona, Atali Micha, Simon Fraser, University PhD candidate, Askatolili. So I just wanted to make sure that I ground the space in those words as well, and Chata Numpa, so that you know who I am and how I'm coming into the space. I don't really need to introduce myself again because Julia did such a wonderful job, but I will just say that my pronouns are she, her, and they. I am currently residing on the lands of the Yavapai Apache and Hohokam nations in what is now known as Arizona. And cannot wait to get back to Vancouver to finish up this PhD in July. So very thankful to Julia for mentioning that, and you all for holding space as students as well, because I know we're going through the ringer right now. So just wanted to say that. Okay, so although we had a prayer to open the space, which again is so beautiful and grounding and needed, I do want to also open the space with solidarity statements because I think we need to know who we are coming into the space. We need to know who we bring with us coming into the space, and I think it helps us to really engage in deeper conversation together. So I'm going to give you a little bit of instruction on these solidarity statements, and then what I'll ask us to do is to take in a breath in and out together while I give you those commands silently. So I want you to think about three things. Who are the original people of your land and space? Who are the people who helped to cultivate the land, economy, institutions that we utilize, but who weren't shown homage or in some cases weren't given compensation for that sacrifice? And then third, who are you and where do you come from? So I'm going to start by saying thank yous. I'm going to say the thank yous for the lands that I gather on today because we're everywhere. So as I say those, I want you to think where you are and whose lands you gather on today as well. And then again, I'll invite us to take in a deep breath together and a breath out together while we thank these groups silently. So first, thank you to the individuals and communities' lands that I'm currently residing on and occupying. The land of the Apache, the Yavapai, and the Hohokam nations. May they be remembered for their stewardship and care of the space. I would also like to thank the enslaved people, people of indentured servitude, and those subjected to human taxation who helped to build economies, buildings, and institutions that we have the privilege of serving in within North America. May they be remembered for their sacrifice and honor. And finally, I'd like to thank each of our ancestors for doing their collective work to make sure that we could be here today to ground and to share in this information. May each of us be their wildest dreams. So now if you'll take a moment to close your eyes, we can take in the 3 breaths together on my command. So breathe in. Thank you to the indigenous peoples whose lands we're on. Breathe out. Breathe in. Thank you to the enslaved, indentured, and those subjected to human taxation. Breathe out. And breathe in. Thank you to our ancestors for doing their collective work for us to be here. And breathe out. Now I'm going to invite you to keep your eyes closed. If that's comfortable for you, or a soft gaze to the floor is always fine. We also like to start all of these presentations with a grounding practice, because I think we all need it. And especially for going into an hour or so of healing information, I want to make sure we're being intentional about the containers that we create together. Everything today that we're going to do is an invitation. However, I really would be thankful if you take the time that we have together to be uncomfortable and sit with that uncomfortability if it comes up for you. Be curious to engage in the practices when you can. And this is one of those opportunities. So as you keep your eyes closed, I'll invite you to find a comfortable seat. The invitation is to find a position that gives you the greatest care. Think what position allows you to arrive in the right way. With your eyes closed and finding yourself in a good position, I invite you to take a few deep breaths. Breathing in, expanding the diaphragm. Exhaling, allowing that diaphragm to relax, releasing any movements it took for you to get into these positions. Breathing in, enlivening the body, and exhaling, signaling to your body it's time for rest and relaxation. As you continue to breathe, noticing wherever that breath comes up for you the easiest, maybe in the belly or the chest, maybe the tip of the nostrils. I'll invite you to open your ears as I read this poem to you, which is called An Invitation to Brave Space by Mickey Scott Bay Jones. Together, we will create brave space because there's no such thing as safe space. We exist in the real world. We've all carried scars and we've all caused wounds. In this space, we seek to turn down the volume of the outside world. We amplify voices that fight to be heard elsewhere. We call each other to more truth and love. We have the right to start somewhere and continue to grow. We have the responsibility to examine what we think we know. Now, we will not be perfect. The space will not be perfect. Will not always be what you wish it to be, but it will be our brave space together. And we will work on it side by side. Taking a few more deep breaths, knowing that we welcome you into this space, who you are today, what we've brought with you. We welcome your strength and your struggle. Both have a place and are important. We welcome all of your identities into the space, race, background, age, body shape, sexual orientation, gender identity, disabilities, the money you have or you don't. We welcome them all. When you hear this bell, I'll invite you to take in any movements that feel right to you, opening your eyes, bringing your body back online, and coming back into the room. Okay. Thank you all for engaging in that grounding practice. I like to say, we're really here now. We're really shown up. Okay, so roadmap for today, we're going to talk a little bit about procrastination and stress. So, what does stress look like in your body? How can mindfulness help to give you a pause between procrastination, rumination, and action? And then we're going to give some tips and tricks to wellness practices through mindfulness and pro-sociality, and a resource sheet at the end. So you'll leave with some really great tools that you can use during any time that you have procrastination or any time that you're going to be working through any of your educational time. Okay. So let's first talk about what we know. We know that procrastination can lead to stress, and this stress can lower our emotional capacity and tolerance and increase our vulnerability. And this can create a cyclical process, which makes us want to procrastinate more. The more stress that we feel, the more we push things off. And the more we push things off, the more stress that we feel. There's a lot of research that tells us that this cyclical process is real. And this week is all about breaking this cycle. So, in thinking about breaking this cycle, I first want to talk about how this cycle feels in your body. So, where do you notice the stress coming up in your body? And please give us some examples of how you experience procrastination stress. So, feel free to jot those down in the chat. Or if it's comfortable for you, you can unmute for a second and just yell out some things that allow you to understand how you feel this stress in your body.
Tense neck and shoulders.
Head, neck, and shoulders. Absolutely. Yes, Iman says, I feel a sense of paralysis in my lower body. Definitely. Migraines. Absolutely, Hannah. Eva says, feeling a pressure in my chest. Paulette says, I get a headache, which keeps getting stronger. Yes, absolutely. So these are all things that signal to us that something is wrong. Like we are experiencing stress. Now, stress can be, as you know, a short-term thing or a long-term thing. And procrastination, as you know, can lead to stress and so forth and so on. So as a well being researcher, I know that long term stress can lead to many issues, both emotionally and physiologically. And before we jump into how to break the cycle, I want to take just a moment to play this video to give you some ideas of how this can look long term.
Are you sleeping restlessly, feeling irritable or moody, forgetting little things, and feeling overwhelmed and isolated? Don't worry, we've all been there. You're probably just stressed out. Stress isn't always a bad thing. It can be handy for a burst of extra energy and focus, like when you're playing a competitive sport or have to speak in public. But when it's continuous, the kind most of us face day in and day out, it actually begins to change your brain. Chronic stress, like being overworked or having arguments at home, can affect brain size, its structure, and how it functions, right down to the level of your genes. Stress begins with something called the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis, a series of interactions between endocrine glands in the brain and on the kidney, which controls your body's reaction to stress. When your brain detects a stressful situation, your HPA axis is instantly activated and releases a hormone called cortisol, which primes your body for instant action. But high levels of cortisol over long periods of time wreak havoc on your brain. For example, chronic stress increases the activity level and number of neural connections in the amygdala, your brain's fear center. And as levels of cortisol rise, electric signals in your hippocampus, the part of the brain associated with learning, memories, and stress control, deteriorate. The hippocampus also inhibits the activity of the HPA axis, so when it weakens, so does your ability to control your stress. That's not all though. Cortisol can literally cause your brain to shrink in size. Too much of it results in the loss of synaptic connections between neurons and the shrinking of your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that regulates behaviors like concentration, decision-making, judgment, and social interaction. It also leads to fewer new brain cells being made in the hippocampus. This means chronic stress might make it harder for you to learn and remember things, and also set the stage for more serious mental problems like depression and eventually Alzheimer's disease. The effects of stress may filter right down to your brain's DNA. An experiment showed that the amount of nurturing a mother rat provides its newborn baby plays a part in determining how that baby responds to stress later in life. The pups of nurturing moms turned out less sensitive to stress because their brains developed more cortisol receptors, which stick to cortisol and dampen the stress response. The pups of negligent moms had the opposite outcome, and so became more sensitive to stress throughout life. These are considered epigenetic changes, meaning that they affect which genes are expressed without directly changing the genetic code. And these changes can be reversed if the moms are swapped. But there's a surprising result. The epigenetic changes caused by one single mother rat were passed down to many generations of rats after her. In other words, the results of these actions were inheritable. It's not all bad news, though. There are many ways to reverse what cortisol does to your stressed brain. The most powerful weapons are exercise and meditation, which involves breathing deeply and being aware and focused on your surroundings. Both of these activities decrease your stress and increase the size of the hippocampus, thereby improving your memory. So don't feel defeated by the pressures of daily life. Get in control of your stress before it takes control of you.
So thank you so much for engaging with that and listening to that TED education. I promise I don't want to scare you all. And the last video was not to make you more stressed, but the purpose of it was to get you to understand how deeply epigenetic these stressors can cause us to be. How sometimes when we're stressed, it can affect others, not only in this community bubble, but literally the people who we care about. And so thinking about procrastination, thinking about the stress cycle, it can affect the way that we engage in life. It can affect our neural pathways. It can affect our creativity. It can affect the ways in which we engage with information, the ways with which we study, the ways with which we write, but it can also affect others. And so it's important for us to find ways to break the cycle of rumination, to break the cycle of stress, and to feel ourselves grounding in what is important now. So, one of those reasons that prolonged stress can turn into burnout is because, again, we don't know how to break those cycles. And as you saw in the last video, meditation can be a really great way to do that. So, we're going to talk a little bit about how mindfulness and meditation can help us get to that particular space, what mindfulness and meditation really are, and how we can engage in those in everyday activities and habits. But it's also important because if we want to be leaders in our life, and specifically when we move into our career aspects, right? If I'm focusing on going in to be a professor as a psychology PhD, we found that in a study that 47% of the time that these leaders spent their time mind wandering. So as a professor, if I'm in class, 47% of that time was spent mind wandering. Even if I am, giving a lecture at that particular time, I'm on autopilot for 47% of that time. And 70% of the time, they reported being inattentive at meetings and important work conversations. So this means in those 1 hour meetings, 70% of that time, people were like, girl, I don't even know what's going on, right? So it's important that we make the time to understand how stress can impact these things for our career. But the most important piece of this was that only 2% leaders actually said that they were doing something about it. But here's the thing, by you being here, you're already breaking that cycle. And this week and beyond, by learning these skills that you're thinking of putting the self first, you are emphasizing what self-care really means for your future. And today I'm here, and throughout this week, other presentations and other presenters are here to help you think about what it can mean to break that cycle right now. So in thinking about breaking that cycle, Viktor Frankl, a genocide survivor who went through some really horrific things, wrote a book about how to move through the most difficult times in our lives. And he said between stimulus and response, there's a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom. And that's what the practices that we're going to be doing today together can be: a space, a space for us to notice how we're feeling, a space for us to catch ourselves slipping when we're slipping into that procrastination cycle, or a space for us to just notice that we might need a break. So let's begin with our first form of practice, which is mindfulness. Mindfulness, or present moment experiences, are a really great way to help break that cycle. Today, we're going to do some experiential learning. But first, I want to explain what I'm talking about when I'm talking about mindfulness. And this is very important because mindfulness is talked about in a bunch of ways nowadays in different disciplines and sports, contemporary awareness. But it's important that I define how we're going to engage in mindfulness. And I hope you'll think about this way that we'll engage forthcoming as well. So, first, I see mindfulness as an expansive practice. And what I mean by that is that mindfulness is not only a practice of the self and for the self, but can be inherently seen in all of these different social circles, such as with others, with communities, and in broader humanity, which includes our plant and animal relatives. In this understanding, there's an acknowledgement to the global indigenous and the global majority populations who have been utilizing the skills of mindfulness from time immemorial. But I also understand that mindfulness is not new. It's a practice that is cultural and collective. And of course, as it can be expansive, we can understand that mindfulness can be equitable as well. So, equitable mindfulness is a model that supports the notion that mindfulness is inclusive and is meant to be used as a practice of action at its base. So, first, there's no need for space or for status or for any special equipment to practice mindfulness. Everybody has a breath and a body. And though some people may be more able bodied than others, all you need is yourself to do this work. Next, this model situates mindfulness as a way that people can recognize and begin to actionize mindfulness against barriers and systems that keep people from belonging in community. And so the more that we do this work, the more we can recognize the systems that are not inclusive and where we can see our actions affecting other people. So when we're talking about stress and procrastination, which can be a individual experience, as we saw in that video, this individual experience can not only affect ourselves, but others. We need to make sure that we have a practice that combats that, right? And so as we talk about mindfulness from this standpoint as being a personal practice, we're also going to talk about it as being something that can help you sustain practices of self-care, education, and community liberation. So it can help to focus on the ways in which you engage with others and notice how systems are working for others as well. So wanted to make sure that I gave you that background about how we conceptualize mindfulness so that when we move into our practices, we can understand how this particular practice may be for me, but how we're thinking about how it can affect others as well. All right. So if you remember in that first paradigm that I showed you, the expansive model of mindfulness, mindfulness starts with the self. And because we're focused on breaking cycles of self-stress, I want to start with a very simple yet powerful practice that you can do anytime you're noticing anything in your body that doesn't feel like rest. Okay? So we're going to do a short body scan. And the invitation again is to find a comfortable seat, a seat that gives you the greatest care. Feel free to get up and move. If you want to stand for this practice, you're welcome to. I suggest standing against a wall. If you want to sit or lay down for this practice, you're welcome to as well. But the invitation is to find a seat for this practice, a stand for this practice, a lay for this practice that gives you the greatest care. And when you find yourself in that particular position, I'll invite you to close your eyes. That's comfortable for you. Or a soft gaze to the floor is always fine. And again, let's just begin by taking a few deep breaths. Breathing in, acknowledging to the body that you may have moved into a different position, but exhaling and releasing that movement. Inhaling, finding yourself still, relaxed, and exhaling, releasing any movements that took for you to get into these positions. I'll invite you to find your awareness, and if it's on that breath or that belly, the chest, the tip of the nostrils. I invite you to take that awareness down to your feet. So noticing your feet, where they're standing, noticing the pressure of your feet as they touch the ground. You're laying down, noticing the pressure of the ankles on the floor. You're taking a moment to notice your feet and your socks, the warmth. Whatever may be coming up for you. As you notice this part of your body, I'll invite you to give it a little love. Imagining taking a breath through the front of the feet and exhaling through the bottom of the feet, relaxing your feet just a little more. Giving you space just to be, maybe wiggling your toes, reminding your body that you notice you have toes and feet right now. And then moving that awareness up through the legs, the shins, calf muscles, the knees, the quads, the hamstrings. Just taking a moment to notice these parts of your body. Throughout the day, we don't take the time to just place our awareness on these spaces, in these places. So noticing any tingling or tightness, anything that you might need to send a gentle signal to tell that part of your body to relax. And then again, maybe imagining a breath through the front of the legs, out of the back of the legs, signaling to the legs that they can relax now. Moving that awareness through the seat bones, up into the back and the stomach. We hold a lot of tension in this area, our abdomen. This is where our organs are. And so for just a moment, placing your awareness in your body, in your inner organs. Noticing if anything needs just a little more love, or if you need a stretch here. Maybe a deep breath, signaling to that vagus nerve, which controls our parasympathetic and our sympathetic nervous system, to rest and digest. So inhaling, deep breath, and exhaling, maybe with a sigh, relaxing those inner organs, relaxing the belly, relaxing the back, and then imagining taking that deep breath in through the chest, the belly, and exhaling, giving any parts of your body here a little more love as you move your awareness up through the chest, into the arms, upper arm, lower arms, the fingers. Our fingers do a lot of work during the day, so maybe just taking a couple of moments to stretch those fingers out, balling them into a fist and stretching them again, wiggling those fingers, noticing any tingling or tightness, and giving a little bit of love to each of these areas. And then taking a deep breath through the front of the arms, relaxing the arms at your sides. And exhaling, allowing those shoulders to drop as you bring your awareness up into those shoulders and neck. As mentioned before, we hold a lot of procrastination stress here. Stress shows up a lot in our neck and in our shoulders. And so maybe first just noticing if there's anything here that you might need, whether that be some shoulder circles, maybe taking a moment to squeeze the shoulders into the neck, and then relaxing those shoulders a bit as you sigh on an exhale. Just noticing if taking those movements gave you any relief. You still have some tingling or tightness, and you need to give this space of your body a little more love. And then finally, taking your awareness into the face, into the head. Our face does a lot of emoting during the day. We have so many muscles in our face that we use. And so actually being aware of that and taking a moment to allow your face muscles to just droop. There's no need to emote right now. No one's watching you. So just letting your face muscles drop and seeing what that feels like. Doing the same to your head area, just allowing those muscles to relax. Seeing if you notice any tingling or tightening or warmth at the top of your scalp. And then just imagining taking one deep breath through the face and exhaling, allowing those facial muscles, the head muscles to just relax a bit more. As you now shift your awareness to your entire body. Just giving it one last body scan, seeing if there's anything here that needs a little bit of love or a little bit of stretch, a little bit of relaxation, giving that to your body. As you imagine taking one last deep breath through the feet, breathing through the ground, through Mother Earth, allowing that breath to move through your entire body as you exhale through the top of the head. Giving yourself one last moment to enjoy this practice before wiggling fingers and toes, doing some shoulder circles, opening your eyes, and then coming back into the room. Oh, I see some yawning. It's good. It's really good. Awesome. So let's debrief for just a moment. What did you notice? Feel free again to put that in the chat or mute yourself for a moment, shout it out. But what did you notice about this practice?
My neck is very tense
Your
and my
neck.
eyes are very tired.
Yes. So during the practice, you noticed your neck was tense, that your eyes were tired. And I also saw that you had the time to take a deep yawning breath, which again gives some oxygen to that brain, which allows ourselves to kind of be a little bit more in the moment. And sometimes we just recognize we're tired. Like this practice gives us the opportunity to just recognize that we need a little bit more love. Thank you so much for that. Hannah said, I never take the time to do this. Yes. When do we actually take the time to give our body a little bit of love, to notice what's actually going on in our body during these times, during these stressful times? So, this practice is a really great one to do when we are in the thick of things. Um, as mentioned, I'm a PhD candidate, I'm writing my dissertation. So, I'm in the thick of things right now. I do like 30, 40-minute writings, and then I take a 5-minute break. And during that 5-minute break, I take intentional time to notice what's going on in my body. So even though I may not take a long body scan like we just did now, I take the time to take just maybe 1 or 2 minutes to scan through the body to see if I'm holding any stress anywhere that I can just release for a moment. That release of stress, again, signals to the body that I don't need to be in fight or flight right now, that I can signal rest and digest, which gives me the opportunity to notice some things in my brain, which clears up all of the things, again, this fear center, and allows me to be more creative, allows me to be more present in my writing. So, this is a really good practice to help you when you're in the thick of things and you really need something to break up the cycle of stress. Okay, we're going to move on to our second practice, which is one of my absolute favorite practices. So, we're going to shift into that sphere of others in our expansive model. So, let's do a practice in prosociality and support. And for this practice, we're going to send you all into groups of 3. Each person will have a chance to do all 3 actions that I'm about to describe. So, please make sure that you stick to the times that we have listed. Okay. So, there's going to be one speaker, one listener, and one witness. The speaker will talk about something that they have coming up that they feel like they need just a little bit of help with. The speaker is going to speak uninterrupted for 30 seconds. The listener will just listen to them for 30 seconds. They will not give any advice. They're not going to talk or interject. They're just going to take the time to hold the space, to listen, and to give any nonverbal feedback that feels right. The witness is going to sit and witness this container, witness what's happening for the full minute. Okay, so it's going to be a practice of present moment experience. For the full minute, your job is just to be there, right? Support can look like many things. Witnessing is one of them. After the 30 seconds that the listener is going to listen, the next 30 seconds within this minute is going to be the listener giving advice or supporting that person. Okay. So I may have confused you. Let me go back. There's a full minute, 30 seconds of speaker uninterrupted, the listener listening, 30 seconds of the listener responding, giving advice, again, committing to sending the person an email or to remind them about a deadline. Support can also look like sending memes on a difficult day. But the listener, after the 30 seconds of listening, is going to give this person some advice. And then the witness is going to take the full minute to witness the exchange. Everybody get that? All right. So Julia, if you have.
Yes, I just have Abby. Do you have
Okay.
3 people in the room with you there? Yeah, so y'all can do it in your room, the 3 of you. And then Tara, you had some people in your space, I think, too. So I'm gonna open some breakout rooms. But Tara, if you have multiple people in your room, you can do it in person in your room. Okay, great. So then I'm gonna move you to a new room.
Okay.
And I'm gonna put Abby in a new room, and then I'm gonna jump into room 3.
Perfect. And I'm going to make sure that I broadcast what I just said so that if you get confused, that makes more sense. So we're going to do this for 5 minutes. We're going to take 1 minute for each slot, right? 30 seconds, the person is listening and speaking. 30 seconds, the listener is giving them advice. 1 full minute of the witness. Then we're going to switch, and then we're going to switch. So it should be 3 rounds.
Okay. I'm just trying to keep the rooms. Okay. I think it's good. Maybe Yan Yan is not at the computer at this moment. Sarah, are you at the computer at this moment?
Yeah, sorry. I'm seeing the breakup rooms.
Yeah, I didn't put you in one because I had,
Oh,
but I can, and in fact, I would like to if you're, because Yan Yan hasn't joined. So can I put you into room 1?
yeah, that sounds great. Awesome.
Okay. Okay, and then I'm gonna pause the recording.
All right. So for this debrief, I would really love to hear from as many people as possible. And if possible, at least one person from every room. So I'm going to start with Abby's room with that great formation that let us know that you all were in a circle. If you all wouldn't mind just telling us what happened. How did you feel asking for help? How did it feel receiving it? And what was it like being a witness?
Sure. Thank you, Tiara. So we had a wonderful sharing session here, and then through the session, we also had another attendee, Daniel, join us, and so we were able to extend that circle of sharing here, and so it felt very empowering. I work here as a learning strategist, and then we have tutors, we have students here, but it just felt a privilege to kind of share my thoughts as well, and then to receive help from them.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I also I just came from a tutoring class like not more than 2 minutes ago. And so the question on the screen is asking how did it feel asking for help and receiving support. It felt really nice because I feel like one thing I've come to notice is that one flaw a lot of us might tend to have is we tend to think that we can do everything ourselves. And so there's power in teamwork is like kind of a really big thing that I've come to discover pretty recently. And so I've taken a lot more tutoring classes here at the school, which has been a huge help for me, like immense help for me. And so a lot quicker than if I were to try to study everything by myself. So actually reaching out and having a really good support group like here at this school was like, it was amazing. And so, and then also just now, I just entered pretty late and I was just talking about kind of like my stress levels and how I cope with them. And sometimes I just, it feels good to say something that you've been thinking in your mind out loud, because it's kind of getting that like second perspective. And so when I was saying my techniques out loud, I was like thinking, oh dang, I'm like actually taking a pretty good step forward into my mental health and reducing these bad habits and replacing them with the good ones. And so overall, it was pretty cool. Very nice.
Thank you so much for saying that, for being brave enough to put that into the space. And also just for calling out the fact that we don't ask for help often. But when we do, it's this really empowering community feel and vibe that allows us to get through the difficult times in our lives. And this can be difficult times in school. It can be difficult times in anything, right? And this insight is so wonderful and beautiful for you to have brought to the front. So thank you so much for stating that and for saying that. And that's what I hope that you all gain in thinking about how you receive this support is understanding that, you know, asking for support is okay and receiving it is okay as well. So thank you. Anyone else? So let's see, who else was in the room by themselves? I think it was Tara. All right. So as Tara is finding that unmute button, I will ask the 2 Zoom rooms if anyone wants to share. Shanavia, did I say your name right? I see you off mute, girl. So you feel free.
Shanavia.
Shanavia.
Yes. So in our group, like it was pretty interesting. It was great, like just hearing like someone else is listening to you. It was so great being heard.
Mm.
I feel that sometimes we kind of like we're hard on our own selves because we feel like we are different. And it's so amazing to just see that everyone else in the room had something in something very similar. And it was just so great that to know that you're not by yourself. So like the previous student said, just seek help and be heard. Like it felt amazing.
Wow, wow.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you again for being brave enough to talk in the space, and also for saying that, for talking
Thank you.
about how it was so nice to just be heard, to be
Yes.
listened to.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. That's one of the things about this particular practice as well, is that how many times do we just take the time to listen to someone uninterrupted? You know, giving feedback is great. Being involved in the conversation is wonderful, and that's how conversations are. And in some cases, people may be reluctant to ask for help because they don't feel like you'll be willing to actually give them space as to listen. Um, One of the techniques I tell providers. So a lot of times I work with healthcare providers, I work with therapists, so forth and so on. And one of the things I often tell them is that the listening space is so important, because at the end of the day, if someone is telling you their story, and they're used to being interrupted, they'll give you a piece of that story, right? And then they're used to getting some feedback or being acknowledged. When you take the time to let them tell that piece of that story and just wait a few more moments, just be in the moment and wait a few more moments, you'll be surprised, first of all, how awkward it makes them feel, which means that they feel like they need to fill the space more, which is a good thing. But second, what comes up? And often what comes up is this idea of, you know what? And that you know what is followed by so many other insightful pieces, right? And so the space to wait, the space to be uninterrupted, really is a powerful space. And I'm saying this as both somebody who is a student who needs that space, but also someone who is a wellness provider, myself, excuse me, who needs to give that space. And so this is for anybody in the room who advises students, who supports students. That's important as well. So thank you, Shanavia, for bringing that up. Yes, you had something else to
Yes.
say?
Oh, yes. I just wanted to add, like, most times, right, when we speak, we find that a lot of times people don't listen, like, the other party doesn't listen. So you're just like talking about the way you feel, but they never, like, if you ask them, like, so what was I saying again? They'll just be like, they're kind of off, right? But in the group today, like, everyone was listening attentively and answered, like this the exact thing that you want them to say is what they said, and it made everyone in our group felt good.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Kara?
Okay, I got the
There
unmute
we
button.
go.
Sorry, I'm struggling with like a hybrid situation that's not really set up for hybrid. Um, I was with one other student and unfortunately he had to head out, but before he left, we were more reflecting on the body scan that we did before this exercise because we didn't have time to do the full exercise. And the presentness, I can see the thread through that kind of like individual feeling challenged to be present with yourself and slow down in the middle of the day. And I think that's also similar with the presentness when we have conversations with others and just kind of reminding yourself to pause and be in the moment with another person. And a response isn't always required. Sometimes it's just that powerful moment of listening to another person or listening to yourself and your body and where you're at and what you're experiencing in the moment.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you for bringing that into the space. Both this ripple effect of understanding how we can be present with ourselves and how being present with ourselves allows us, once we do that more often, when we practice, to be present with others. And how sometimes the response isn't even needed. It's just being a listening person, a listening body, and how important that can be. Thank you so much, Tara. There was one other room. So if anyone else from that room wants to respond, I would really love to hear if anybody got the chance to be a witness. So during one of the times that other people were speaking and listening, didn't get a chance, got a chance to be a witness and didn't speak at all, and what that was like.
I was in that situation. So in our room, we ran out of time a little bit. So I had the opportunity to listen and I had the opportunity to be the witness. And even though I didn't have a chance to speak, I found it really helpful because some of what was said I could relate to. So they were, there's similar feelings. And yeah, so I felt that that was just as helpful being the
Great.
witness and being the listener.
Yeah, thank you very much. One of the things that I think comes up a lot when I ask people what the witness was like, first of all, witnessing is a very sacred space for people who of the global indigenous. Witnessing is how we keep stories. Witnessing is how we know each other throughout the relationships that we have, right? Witnessing is how we recognize what's going on in the world and can actionize ourselves after that to change things. So witnessing is a very sacred space. And being able to be a witness, not only in the lives of other people who are conversing or who are, you know, in relationship with each other is important, but being a witness in your own life is important. And I hope that that translated a little bit because sometimes we don't even get the chance to recognize that mindfulness is just noticing. It's just being a witness to whatever is happening. Witnessing is powerful. And so I invite you throughout this week, throughout your life, to practice just witnessing. Practice just being there and noticing what's coming up, noticing how people are moving, noticing systems, noticing what people are saying or how they're being treated. And those things can help us to, again, when we're translating how we can be in our own bodies, be in conversations and relationships with others, it can also translate into the way that we like to change systems, that we can change the ways that people are treating others and engaging. So witnessing is a very important part of this. And I thank those of you who got the chance to play that important role in this particular activity. Okay, so our final practice before we get into tips and tricks and any questions that you may have is going to be a guided practice on community support. And I also love this practice because I think community support, just as we talked about earlier, and I can't remember the gentleman's name, but the one that was in Abby's room, is an important piece of moving through the cycle of procrastination and stress that we don't always acknowledge. Our communities have the power to help us get from point A to point B. And a lot of times, like we said, we think we're doing this alone, but we're not. And it's powerful to recognize in a lot of senses how important community can be to our journeys. One of the things that I take with me, and then I'm even going to put into my dissertation presentation, and that we practice coming into the space, is recognize who's coming into the space with us, who's supporting us as we're going to be on this journey. Noticing that and having that community support can help us break that cycle of stress and procrastination. So we're going to practice community support. And this is moving us again into this other space of broader humanity. All right, so the invitation again is to find a space that gives you the greatest care, a comfortable position. So if you want to lean back in your chair, you want to close your eyes, that's comfortable for you. Soft gaze to the floor is always fine. Maybe let your head hang. Maybe let your arms just relax in your lap. Finding a position that gives you the greatest care. And then again, just begin by taking a few deep breaths. Signaling to the body that we're practicing again. And we're coming into the here and now. Breathing in awareness. Breathing in rest. Exhaling any thoughts or movements or Maybe that grocery list you haven't gotten to, just allow it to dissipate for the purposes of this practice. So as you're breathing, I want you to take a moment to find your heart. Notice your heart and the muscles that encase it. And see if you can imagine a warm ball starting from a small nothing sits in your heart, and then growing and growing to a solid glowing ball of light that expands the entirety of your heart muscle. If it's comfortable for you, maybe even taking a hand and placing it over your heart to deeper imagine that warmth, the glow. Feel settled in that warm glow. I'll invite you to invite a person or group in your community that's giving you deep support over your time in university. And I want you to just think about that person or community. I'll ask you to imagine thinking of the ways that they serve you in your community, thinking of the ways that they've been helpful and supportive. Picture their faces and their smiles, and then taking a moment to imagine sending this warm ball of light you have in your heart to each of them. And then as you see that warm ball of light settling in their hands or in their own hearts, I invite you to practice a bit more gratitude using these 3 steps by noticing, by appreciating, and then by planting. So on your next out breath, I'll ask you to notice. Notice how it makes you feel when you consider the ways that this person or the people in your community have supported you. Maybe you sense a softening of your chest, or feelings of kindness, or gentle thoughts arising. And I'll just invite you to make space for whatever comes up for a moment. Just noticing, allowing, holding. Next, I'll invite you to appreciate. From this place of kindness in yourself, you noticed and extended this gratitude through this warm ball to the person or people in your community. Notice how it makes them feel. Appreciate the members of your community, and maybe silently repeat these phrases to them. I am grateful for the time, for the energy, and the gifts that you bring to me and our community. Maybe repeating, I appreciate you. I'm thankful for you. And finally, I'll invite you to plant, taking a moment to come back into yourself and creating a space in your mind and body for this warm ball that you created, this warm space in your heart. And imagine your heart just being a small garden. A garden where you're allowing the inspired actions of people who you care about, who care for you, to water that warm, glowing ball until another sprout of warm, glowing balls emerges, and another, and another. And then I'll invite you to take a couple of those balls and see if you can give them to others in the next few weeks through small actions. Using this guided practice as a tangible way to share notes or buy coffee or say thank you to people in your community who you appreciate. Thinking about ways that you can give back to the community who's given back to you, to the people, to the person who's given back to you. And if nothing comes up for you right now, that's okay. Because now you know you have these seeds you planted of warm glow that you can give to anyone at any time, and that you can receive more. These warm, glowing balls are a representation of how you are allowed to be affirmed and supported. And then finally, as we take in one more deep breath, I'll just ask you to thank the people who you've practiced with in this gratitude space. And remember where you stored these warm, glowing balls, this warm glow, this gratitude. And then when you're ready, you can release your hand from your heart, wiggling your fingers and toes, opening your eyes and coming back into the right. I hope that that was helpful and just full of beautiful seeds that you can plant and to give to people over the next week and for as long as you have these, which is forever in your heart. So before we leave, I just wanted to make sure to give you a couple of tips and tricks that you can take along with you, and a resource sheet will be located at the end. So my suggestion after all of this is to do two things if you can. The first is to be as mindful as possible and to do that in any way that that can show up for you. And that doesn't give you too much, that doesn't allow you to have too much strain. Let me put it that way. Mindfulness shouldn't be a strainful practice. Mindfulness should be a practice of joy, of giving. Now, the symptoms of mindfulness, yes, can sometimes mean that we notice bad things, that it's not all rainbows and sunshines. But just as I would prescribe an exercise to you that feels right, that you can do whenever you want to, that fits into your daily activities, I want to prescribe mindfulness in the same way. So, 3 things that you can do easily. The first is just take 3 breaths. 3 calming, grounding breaths. Again, one thing that we talked about during the body scan is that we have this vagal nerve that comes from our bellies, our guts, into our brains. It's one of the longest nerves in the body. And when we take that deep breath, when we exhale and inhale, it actually triggers that nerve and sends a message to our brains, again, to do the rest and digest, the parasympathetic part. And so taking 3 deep breaths literally allows physiologically our bodies to calm. So when you're stressed, when you have to answer that email that is too much, that stressed you out, and you're like, girl, I don't have time for this, take 3 breaths. Take 3 breaths before responding. Mindful walking. Mindful walking is something that you can do between classes, between meetings, that you can do on your way home, that you could do on your way to the car. Mindful walking is literally noticing each step. So taking a moment to notice your toes coming off of the ground as you walk. Taking a moment to notice your heel going back on the ground. Taking a moment to notice your leg muscles as you're walking. It can also mean witnessing. So as we're talking about noticing what's going on around you, it's being so full in your body that you're noticing maybe the tree that's blowing in the wind, that you're noticing the laughter of somebody who's passing you. So taking a moment to be mindful and mindfully walking. And then affirmations. So we just practiced gratitude, and affirmations is a piece of gratitude. Affirmations and having lists of affirmations is one of my favorite things to do. When someone sends you an email that reminds you how awesome you are, save it into an affirmations folder. Send all of those emails into that affirmations folder. So when you have a tough day, you can remind yourself, listen, I'm awesome. Other things that I do, I have a folder of text messages, of screenshotted text messages from people who I care about, who are reminding me I can do this, that I can get through this. So create a folder on your phone for people who send you those messages, who remind you that you are loved, so that you can go back to those affirmation photos. And then the final thing that I do is I actually get cards from different people who I care about, who have really good messages. And one of those people is Trisha Harshey. She is the rest queen, the minister of rest. And I take those cards that I bought from her and I put them in my mirrors. And so when I am getting ready in the morning, I'm reminding myself of the affirmation of rest, that I deserve rest, that I am affirmed by rest, that my ancestors would have loved for me to have rest, right? And so these are things that you can definitely do to make sure that you're affirming yourself through this process. And then the second thing that I want you all to remember is that giving back to others can actually boost your own well-being. Now, I'll give a caveat to say that giving back to others should only be done if you have the space and the capacity to do so. And as a well-being researcher, I know this is true. So taking the time to get that coffee for somebody, to send that email to remind them about, something that they have coming up. Again, like we talked about, sending memes to somebody who's having a bad day, those things boost your well-being as well. And so try as much as possible to be pro-social as you're going through the time in university, because it does actually support your own personal well-being. And if nothing else, if all of these things are too stressful and you can't add anything into your calendar, just know that this time right here is enough, okay? David Wright wrote this poem, and I'd like to read it to you because it's one of my favorite poems to remind you that you're enough, this is enough, and whatever you can do is enough. So the words go, enough. These few words are enough. If not these words, this breath. If not this breath, this sitting here. This opening to life we refused again and again until now. Until now. So thank you all very much. I'm happy to take any questions that you may have either now or forthcoming. Here is my contact information. There is the QR code to download a resource sheet and also to stay in contact. And so I'd love to hear from you all. I'd love to support you as you're on your own journey. I was talking to Julia earlier and saying that I'm going to be there probably today because I need to be accountable in my own writing sessions. So if you want to do writing sessions together or whatever feels right, feel free to reach out to me. So deep thank you.
Thank you so much, Tara. That was amazing. I really appreciate, I feel like I was reflecting on how you started us off thinking about the cycle that we can get in of like stress and procrastination and how it can really spiral, and then took us through spirals of positivity, like how we can build out from small practices that are to the self and spiral outward to each other and to bigger groups and communities, and connecting pro-socially and with gratitude, and how those, like, that positive cycle can help us to counteract the challenging spirals and cycles that we can find ourselves kind of trapped or feeling trapped in. So very much appreciate that. Very much appreciate the reference to the rest deck. I was literally just given that as a gift on the weekend, so I'm very excited to connect with it further. And yeah, happy if anybody has any questions that they want to bring forward. I'm happy to help support that. People can send them to me in direct message in the chat if you don't want to put it out to everybody, or you can unmute, speak a question into the space, or comment. It doesn't have to be a question, but if there are things that you're also wanting to appreciate, if you want to use one of your glowing sprout seeds to appreciate Tiara or this time together, please do that too. And I know people have to hop off to busy lives, so thanks, Hannah. Hannah's saying that she really appreciated this workshop, and I know she was a bit worried she was going to have to miss it, but she didn't have to miss it, so that's great.
Thank you, Hannah. Really appreciate you being here. Thank you.
Anybody have questions, comments? Or we can just hang out and have a moment of silence together too. That's also fine.
Daniel wants to say something.
Go
I
ahead.
just wanted to say I really appreciated you putting this this together, and that I took away some pretty valuable lessons, or even just like reminders, which are also equally valuable. And so I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who put it together. Meant a lot.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Devin. And again, thank you to Julia and also everyone who put this week together. I completely agree. What a valuable and beautiful space, and the reminders are needed for all of us, right? Thank you, Devin. I appreciate you.
In the chat, Eva saying that they really enjoyed the workshop and that the resource sheet QR code is not working.
Okay, I will send the resource sheet to Julie.
Yeah, I'll get the resource sheet added to the session material, so everybody will be able to grab it from there, if that's okay with you, Tiara. And
thank you, Eva.
Yeah, and then the Paulette is asking about whether the PowerPoint presentation slides could also be shared that way.
Yeah, definitely. I can download and share those.
Okay, great. So if you send me both those things, I can get them up.
And thank you, Abdul. I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you all so much.
I love the description, reality-based workshop.
Yeah.
Very real, right? So we're in the realness together for sure.
Oh, that's probably one of my favorite comments. Reality-based workshop. I'm taking that. I'll be like
reality-based work. We live in the real world together. Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tiara. Thank you all. I really appreciate you being here.
Yeah, and I want to also just say thank you again to Elder Ruth for opening the space. I'm not sure if everybody was able to be on the call when Elder Ruth gave her opening and prayer, but really, really powerful medicine that she brought for us. And she was very clear when she spoke with us about how the power of the prayer would be with us through the whole week, that it was for us and for this event, and that it would bring us through this week. So particularly if you're going into any sessions that feel challenging, and I know Tiara, you also too like invited us to kind of sit with the discomfort, recognizing that changing habits and facing kind of some of our own stress responses and that sort of thing can be really uncomfortable, can be really hard. So if you find that comes up for you this week, just encouraging you to remember that we were really brought into the work in a good way, through a lot of powerful insights and medicines that are carried by an elder, to encourage us to do that work, that healing practice together. So grateful for that. So grateful for the good energy that Elder Ruth brought being carried forward through everything you did, Tiara. Thank you. And yeah, anybody else have anything they want to ask, say, offer?
Sorry, I'm just going to interrupt. I didn't officially raise my hand. I was just going to say that I really appreciate the level of student engagement we've had so far. I've only come to this session so far, and the opening as well, the first kind of welcome for troubleshooting, and the level of student engagement is so surprising to me and just makes me feel so good inside. And in particular, the two folks who were in my group for the witness speaker response exercise that Tiara set up. I was so amazed that they participated so willingly and had so much to give to that. So that was such a gift to me that I'm going to carry throughout the week. High hopes for the week based on the interaction so far. So thank you.
Just taking more deep breaths, and happy to sit in the space. I saw a professor talking about one of the practices they did where they just invited the students to take some time to be in Zoom before the class started and just smile at each other and then just look at the faces on the screen and like find one that felt like a particularly warm smile for you to look at and just look at it for a bit. And I was like, oh, like it's amazing that just this world where we're distanced from people a lot of the time. But yeah, I'm happy to just sit in Zoom and smile at each other if that's helpful, and also recognize that people have lots of things calling to them. So do feel free to stay and do feel free to go. Do feel free to ask a question or share anything that you'd like. And yeah. When I said smile at each other, everybody smiled and it was really nice. I was like, oh, I like seeing everybody smiles. Yay, thanks, Tara.
Thank you so much, Tiara.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you all. Bye, Abby. Bye, Room.
Bye, Room.
Ah, so nice.
Mhm.
Abdul, where are you? Now I'm just curious about who's in the room.
I need to leave.
No. I was just wondering if you